Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Thursday night, April 7th, 2016. This is King Jordan Radio you are listening to. First of all, I want to thank the person that made this interview possible. Her name is Allison. She has not yet called in. But in any event, I'd like to thank everybody that is listening via iTunes all over the world and via KingJordanSportsAndMedia.com. Next week we will have Shane Velez Mitchell, and then the week after that, defense attorney Tom Mesereau. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored and pleased today to be joined with the man who formerly was the host of To Catch a Predator. He now resides on the ID Network. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have him here. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, making his debut, I believe, we have Mr. Chris Hansen. Good evening, Chris, and welcome to King Jordan Radio. How are you?
Well, I'm great. Thanks for having me. How's everything with you?
Everything's good. We don't have our co-host. She has yet to call in. She did have a little butterflies because this would be her debut doing such a show. But I want to introduce you formally. We are all over the world. We do have we do shows every Thursday night. We have legal talks and stuff like that. Just to give you an example, we had Jody Arias' defense attorney last week. As you probably heard in the intro, we're going to have Michael Jackson's former attorney next week. And so that is, and we also do WWE on the side. But it's a great pleasure to have you now with that type of group. And it's a pleasure, definitely. Okay,
well,
first thing I want to start out with is the, because I don't see Allison here yet, but the show To Catch a Predator, which of course is still, seen by millions on YouTube. And first of all, you were a big part of that show, obviously. Now, can you share with my audience one of the most memorable episodes, which you'll always think back to and say to yourself, OMG, I will never, ever forget that episode?
Well, it's about a 100-way tie for first. So, as you know, we have the Killer Instinct show going on now on ID, and we actually
we will definitely get into that.
We also have the Hansen versus Predator, which we've already shot, so we're working on that, and we're in negotiations.
Which they did a parody on.
Yes.
Right. That's good.
Yeah. But I think, when we did that second episode where the first guy in the door on a Wednesday afternoon at about noon was a rabbi, I don't know how, I was just so blown away. And then after that, there was a fellow who was a military guy, there was a teacher, and then a fellow who walked in completely naked. And, at no time in my journalistic training or education at Michigan State University was I taught how to deal with somebody who walked into a sting operation essentially naked. And it was mind-boggling. And with each investigation, there were more and more people who came from all walks of life,
Yes.
People who would be standing next to you at a grocery store or the dry cleaners on a Saturday morning, but who do bizarre things and say things and get caught up in this in a way that I would never have imagined. Honestly, Jordan, at the beginning of this, I thought, we'd do this once or twice, and then nobody would show up. I'd be like the Maytag repairman, taking a nap on the kitchen counter.
Not to be.
But every time we did it, we had more people. It got to a point where we had an investigation set up on the Jersey Shore, and a guy walks in, and he puts his marijuana out in the counter, and he's talking to the decoy, and I walk in, and he looks at me. Before I can say a word, he says, "Oh, you're Chris Hansen." I said, "Well, how do you know that?" He said, "Well, I never miss an episode. When I do, I download them from the internet." I mean, it was stunning to me.
And what year was this about?
This was probably
07?
07, 08. You know, I think the last original To Catch a Predator was 08, and then of course they were recut and re-aired multiple times on MSNBC and around the world. And you know, even today, I mean, we did this investigation in Fairfield, Connecticut for Hansen versus Predator, and
right,
we had
which
everybody
is the new
from
one, right?
the new one, right? And we had everybody from an insurance executive in Boston to guys from Queens to a fellow who I had met on the commuter train from Connecticut to New York. I mean, it's
someone that you personally met on the way.
Personally met on a train, years ago on the commuter train. And
you would have no idea that later that would be
no. I mean, it was stunning to me. And so when I saw him on the monitor, I didn't recognize him. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. And so when I walked out to confront him, he looks at me and says, Chris, no, it's not what you think. You can't do this to me. And the crew thinks he just knows me from television. And then suddenly I realize this is a fellow I know from the train. And so, again, it's the nature of this in terms of these fellows coming from all walks of life. And now, imagine in the beginning we merely put decoys on chat rooms on AOL and Yahoo. But now there are so many other social platforms, Kik and Badu, and I mean there are dozens and dozens and dozens that didn't exist before. So it's a whole new
generation
out there. And that's why we decided to go out there and do it again. I mean, it's a question that I was asked most on social media, in spite of all these other shows I'm working on. It's like, when are you going to do another Predator? And so we decided to, in fact, do it. And that's, why we're at where we're at now.
There's been a lot of questions that people have asked me, why don't you ever go after women? As we see in every day, especially in these last 10 years or so, the teachers that are women teachers are just growing by leaps and bounds, and I'm sure you realize that. Was it a case that you just couldn't find any? You didn't want to go for that? I mean,
well, no, it's honestly, we had one situation in Georgia years ago where a fellow said that he had a woman, his date, who wanted to be involved in a situation to meet a young girl for a sexual liaison. And I think he was just using that as a ploy to get, to the girl. But the experts will tell you that when it comes to female predators, you're more likely to see the teacher scenario that you mentioned earlier, because female predators do not like the anonymity. They like to know who they're going after. Male predators like the anonymity. So it wasn't that we didn't try to expose that end of it. It's just that I don't think it's as prevalent for women as it is for men. And does it happen? Yes.
The chat version,
I wrote about it in the book. Yeah, it does happen online, but it's not nearly as prevalent as men going after younger boys or girls.
And you were going to say you wrote about it on a book. Why don't you tell my audience what book you're talking about?
Well, I wrote a book called To Catch a Predator, protecting your children from online strangers already in your home. And the reason for the book was, we were gathering so much information on cases, on incidents, on things that could really teach parents, teach kids how to be safe, that we couldn't put in the shows. We didn't have time to put them in the shows. So I basically kept a stack of these notes and papers and letters and emails. And one day it occurred to me, it's like, well, I should turn this into a book. And so we did. And so that's out there, and people can get that. But it goes into a little bit more detail in terms of how to protect your children and the discussion you need to have with your kids in terms of online safety.
Now, we talked about all the oh my God people, but was there maybe one or two people that you possibly had compassion for that maybe they got themselves in the wrong situation and they were telling the truth, not in terms of the age or anything, but they really, honestly, it was their first time, like they all say. But was there one person that stands out that maybe, just maybe, he had a bad impulse control, could have got the right help, and maybe wouldn't have been in that situation if for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. And yeah, there have been a number of examples of that. I mean, I think these guys break down into three different categories. There are the heavy hitters, the guys who, with or without the internet, would be doing this, and they cannot be cured. There's the in between guys who have a inclination to do this stuff, but wouldn't do it unless there was the internet, the anonymity, the 24-hour access, the ability to say things online you wouldn't say to a person,
right,
to their face. And then there's these guys who are 23, 24, 25 who are socially inept, and they find themselves chatting with somebody online who's 13 or 14, and they figure, well, in 3 years it'll be legal, and so we'll go for it. But it's this access, the anonymity, and the addictive nature to the internet that drives these guys. And suddenly, they have this opportunity to fulfill this fantasy, and they find themselves, knocking on the door, and we have them in our sting operation. So yeah, I think there's a group that can be given probation, and they'll learn a lesson, and they'll never do this again. I truly believe that. There's a group in the middle who may need some form of therapy and punishment, and they'll be fine. And the third group, never be able to cure them. They're always going to be bad. They need to be locked up forever.
And the audience did absolutely take a liking to it. There's no question. There's no way of hiding that.
Absolutely.
What do you think that the audience was so captured by To Catch a Predator? What did they love about it so much?
Well, I think it's a couple of different things.
TV.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple of different things. I think, we were able to take them into a world that you wouldn't normally see.
Right.
We were able to expose these guys. And, I think my interview style is something I've always tried to do, whether it's a criminal or a hero or a kid or anybody in between. I try to listen, and I allow people to express themselves, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, and hear what they have to say. I mean, my theory is that if you can get inside somebody's mind and understand how they think and do what they do, you can better protect people from being victims of crime. It's the same theory with what we do with Killer Instinct. I mean, you get in people's minds and you show people how bad things happen, and you can prevent them from happening again. But in this particular case, I mean, it got to the point where, only a very small percentage of the guys were running away. Most people would stay and talk, and I think it was because, in a weird way, I showed them a little respect. I said, explain to me why you're here.
Right.
I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying, that you're going to get a break on this, but tell me what brought you here. And I think it opened them up in a way, and to some of these guys, it was cathartic. I mean, they wanted to tell their story. I had a teacher from Cincinnati show up at a home in Greenville, Ohio, and lay it all out and just say, I was online with these people, and at one point they were my age, and all of a sudden I'm 30 and they're 13, and I'm still trying to be with them. And it was a maturity thing. But yet this guy is teaching school, in Cincinnati, and this is a guy who could be with your kids. And so what was eye-opening to me was that, again, it goes back to these guys come from all walks of life, and could be anybody, the doctor, the teacher, the lawyer. I mean, we had millionaires walk in.
And we had, unfortunately, you had the sad show that ended it. I think I'm correct, with the district attorney out of Texas, maybe that
that didn't end the show. We did multiple shows after that. But what happened in that case, and this was a case where an assistant district attorney in Texas chatted with a decoy who identified themselves as a 13-year-old boy online, and never showed up at the house. But in Texas, as in many states, the actual solicitation online constitutes a crime. So the police in that jurisdiction decided to arrest him on that. When they went to the house to arrest him, the assistant district attorney had a computer that contained child pornography. He was trying to destroy the hard drive on that because he knew, as a law enforcement prosecutor, that he faced 10 years in prison for every image he possessed, and there were 10 images on the computer, unmistakably child pornography. And when he couldn't do that, and the police came in, he sadly, nobody wants to see this happen, killed himself, as opposed to face, the music on that. But we went on after that. I mean, we reported it. I mean, it was, again, it's not something you ever want to see. You don't want to see somebody ever kill themselves. It's sad. It's tragic. It's horrifying for the family. But yet, he made the decision to do that, and Dateline had nothing to do with that. Now, there was a lot made of it in different, articles about what happened, and much of it was, not reported accurately. But I was there. I knew what happened. And so again, it's sad, it's tragic, but he made the decision to do that as opposed to face criminal charges as an assistant district attorney. And we went on and did several successful investigations after that.
So I might have saw you in an interview, and the way it goes, or it went at least in the Dateline documentary, it was these people seeing that these girls or boys were 13 and, available to chat. They were the initiators, these perps that came to the house. Is that true?
Yes. No, our decoys never make the first contact. They merely exist in the chat room, and if somebody contacts them first and makes a sexual suggestion, an overture, then the conversation continues, and if a date is made, the person shows up, and then we confront them.
Did you ever have any scenarios where you thought you had a person that was pretty much down, but then the last minute or so didn't show up?
Oh, many. I mean, I think 40% of the people that we had contact with never showed up. And whether they were just, some of these guys just get their kicks out of having the chat and never show up. And, is that a crime? It borderlines on it, but it's, if they don't show up, it's not really a part of our show. And I think that some people, figure it out at the end of the day that's the wrong thing to do, and they don't do it. And, good on them.
Right. And as you say, nowadays, the chat rooms are just much more widespread. There's 1.5 million ways to meet underage people, and right now you do have an online show. So if you would like, tell my audience how they could at least see the arc. I don't know if you're doing new episodes as we speak, but in any event, tell them how
we're shooting it right now. So Hansen versus Predator is the show we're doing now. We shot our first investigation, and we did a crowdfunding thing through Kickstarter, which is great, and we got a lot of attention, and we partnered with IMG, and so we went out and produced it, and so it's done. And so we're in negotiations now with a number of different television and digital networks, and we should know in the next couple of weeks where it's going to air. And trust me, when I know, we'll be happy to let everybody know. But it's close, and it's as I said, it's really it's amazing to me that even after all we did, that it's still 10 guys showed up in 3.5 days, and honestly, Jordan, it could have been 20, but one guy showed up, and he was a former military guy in Iraq, still a National Guard guy, and he works for a cable company, so he's in somebody's house every day, and he's driving around, and he wants us. Excuse me. He's trying to get this 12-year-old girl, or somebody posing as a 12-year-old girl, to get in his car, and he wants to give her driving lessons. So this goes on for about 2 or 3 hours, and he finally comes in the house. I interview him. He admits what he did. He says he needs help, and he goes out. He's arrested, and the police search his car, and inside the car was a black bag with 2 loaded pistols, a knife, duct tape, and a camera. So what do you think was going to happen when that kid went for a ride with him? I mean, it's
it would be danger.
Yeah.
Were you ever in fear of some lunatic just walking through that house, maybe with a loaded gun, and then you walk out there, and then, possibly, what if he started to fire? I always wonder about that.
It's always a concern, but we have a lot of security in the house.
Right.
I mean, a lot goes into it, and we have somebody who watches me, and somebody watches the crew, and so if we think that somebody's got a weapon, I mean, we wouldn't bring them into the house. And if somebody's a military guy, or we've had police officers who've been caught in these things, and we wouldn't do that. But we have technology that allows us to have a pretty good handle on who these guys are, and the technology has only gotten better. The data mining has only gotten better. So we know, and if we thought that there was legitimately somebody who was about to walk in and they had a weapon on them, we would, the police would arrest them before they came in. Now, we had one incident, in Flagler Beach, Florida, near Jacksonville,
right,
where a guy who was a law enforcement officer in a small town in Alabama just above the Florida border was talking to us in a very graphic and threatening way for 3, 4, 5 days. And it looked like he was one of those guys who just wasn't going to show up. So we had worked very late one night, and so the night after that, we shut everything down around 9 o'clock. We went back to the hotel, and we're going to go have a nightcap, and cell phones are ringing, and it's like, this guy just came to the house, and he wants to meet me, he said, but it was dark. And a lot goes into this house. You can't just go back and throw the one switch and turn it all on, right? So it ends up the police stop him, and they ask him, what are you doing? And it's this guy, and so they arrest him. But in his pocket, he had a .38 caliber pistol, and in the car he had a shotgun, an assault rifle, another handgun, and about 600 rounds of ammunition, video camera, an anchor, a chainsaw. I mean, just crazy stuff. So you got to wonder, had he walked in the house, what would happen? I'm glad I didn't have to find out, but he was just one of those guys who could have been big trouble.
Oh, no question about it, and that's the risk you take. But the security that you had with Dateline, is that predominantly the same security you brought over?
It's the same people. Same people.
Same people involved with everything there?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's very interesting. Now, a person that was in the public eye, Jared Fogle. Give me your take on him. You must have been like, I guess doing the show, you weren't surprised, right?
Well,
after all the people you saw.
Anymore, after 36 years in the business, nothing surprises me. But yeah, I mean, here's a guy who obviously had the trust of a lot of people, who encouraged kids to live a healthy life and lose weight, and for whatever reason, and I don't have a particular insight into his psyche, but he took advantage of that situation. And if you're going to plead guilty to what he did, I mean, you got to think that he didn't have a very good defense. He just took what he got and was going to do 15 years. But
no defense. He just pleaded straight guilty. And most attorneys tell me that is one of the lightest sentences for a crime of that nature. I mean, something with all those.
I mean, if I understand this correctly, yeah, but I think some of the victims were in the gray area in terms of, and I'm not defending by one bit.
You're just going by the law.
But yeah, exactly. I think some of the victims were in the gray area of age. So depending on the state, depending on where he was a creep who took advantage of people. But if you're 16, 17, there's a call on the age of consent. And if it was a prostitution thing where he was paying somebody, was it consensual or not? So, that creates a different situation. I'm sure there's more out there, but, he got with his lawyers and he faced the music and did it. Again, and not justifying anything at all, but I think that if the prosecutors thought they could do better by going to trial or charging more, they would have. But I think everybody thought that this was, justice, and they stopped the problem, and that was it.
Yes, and he did hand out a handful of cash, from what I read at least, to the victims. And so a deal was made.
And that doesn't make it any better. It's wrong on every level. But I'm just saying that,
of course,
there's a difference between you get to a point of nuance. I mean, what is wrong versus what is illegal? I mean, clearly it's all wrong. What is illegal? At what age? It differs from state to state and country to country. But there was a lot out there on him. Did you get a chance
here when he was speaking to this lady who turned out to be the informant, which obviously led to everything, and he was just speaking so freely about, like, you and me talking about the
well, that's
NBA
the creepiest part about
it.
Is that, he's talking to this woman who obviously had a really tough call to make. At the end of the day, she did the right thing for justice, but she's talking to him as a reporter, is my understanding, and he just lays into her about this, his fetish and how he likes to have hidden cameras and do this and that. I mean, you can't allow that to go on. I mean, no matter what the confidence is. I mean, it's just wrong on every level.
And I did see somebody on the CNN network I don't want to say that the person said it was okay that he did get a beat down in jail. I don't think anybody deserves a beat down. They're doing their sentence. I don't glamorize things like that. And this person on the HLN network glamorized it. What was your take, or did you hear about this alleged beat down?
I heard about it. I mean, again, I didn't really cover the story thoroughly. I mean, I was on CNN and interviewed about it. I know what you know, and I have my insight from covering these different stories. But I mean, that happens in prison. I mean, when
yes, absolutely.
One of the fellows who got caught in the original Predator series was doing 6.5 years in federal prison, and he was in the TV room one night, and I got this from a very good FBI source, and they're watching To Catch a Predator, which is ironically very popular in the prison community, and it was his episode that comes up, and they didn't know why he was in prison. So they look at him, they look at the monitor, look at him, look at the monitor, look at him, look at the monitor, and all of a sudden he had kind of a rough go for the rest of his sentence. And I don't think he was beaten or anything, but there were obviously cat calls and there was some verbal abuse. I think he was protected.
Probably scared to begin with,
Well, yeah,
being in
exactly.
prison.
I mean, what day are we going to figure out why I'm here? Right, exactly. But that's that's prison life.
That is so tough. And my lawyer, my defense attorney, that's a very close friend, says, quote, you could go to jail for almost anything. And he even said this, not laughing, he said, murdering is treated less as a bad thing in prison. And I want to parenthesize that, than child molestation.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So there's no question of that. Did you get a chance to catch the 10-week episode of the FX story of O.J. Simpson?
I saw some of them. I'm a little behind, but it was pretty compelling stuff. I mean, I covered some of that back when it happened. I do want to play a small clip for you, and I do want to ask you about the story because I think it's amazing. So let's hear. I want to play for the audience in case they didn't know what's going on. Here is a little piece. Okay.
My name is Jeff Massa, and I am the production designer for American Crime Story. We're in 1994 and 1995 on this show. We have a great team who did an amazing job recreating it. We certainly matched a lot of the architectural details to have people walk into that set and really feel like they've just entered a time machine. You really feel like you've stepped back into 1994.
Barbara Walters called me.
Barbara Walters?
Yeah.
She knows you? She talked to Mom and Bruce, too. Bruce is famous. He won the Olympics.
In general, when we're starting the show, I rough out a ground plan, I do a perspective sketch, put that together with pictures of the places we've already shot, and then some ideas for the decor of the room. And I have a great team of prop makers, painters, shoppers, swing gang, construction set decorator to put it all together.
Seeing everything for the first time was so wowing because
The level of detail that's gone into this show has been impeccable.
I think the production design is just fantastic on this.
The sets are so amazing because they're so accurate.
They really spend time for detail, little things down to a T.
We've done such a good job of getting all the details right. It's almost like you could intercut real footage and our footage and you wouldn't know the difference.
There's a lot of specificity, and as an actor, that's exactly what you want in your performance and in your surroundings.
Walking through the set has been fantastic. Look at this office. We're sitting here in Cochran's fancy office right now with all of its glass windows and stuff. It irks the bejesus out of me. Our offices are very simple, very humble. I feel all the frustrations of Marsha and Chris as they try to do their jobs.
As far as sets are concerned, I probably enjoyed the home office of Robert Shapiro. I used probably every inch of that house in my expressions as his character. How do I get rid of those 911 tapes?
The set that we're in now, the Shapiro study, is completely designed. That's really what we like to do. In this case, John Travolta is in this set quite a bit, so we wanted to have a space that he can really perform in and feel comfortable in. We had some painters that did some really, really beautiful work.
I think the production design kind of nailed it. We actually got to shoot in Kardashian's house where all this went down.
Father, please have mercy on him.
The bathroom there was spectacular. Just knowing that we were in that space where he might have prayed, more than anything, that location was, for me, it was significant.
The courtroom is so iconic. Everybody in the world has seen that courtroom. Our directors and our DP are shooting that courtroom in a way that nobody ever saw it.
Absolutely 100% not guilty.
This is the courtroom, which is almost exact in size. We stretched it by about 6 feet just to give the actors a little bit more acting space. You can see more depth, you can see more life in the background.
Eerie when you walk in there going, I cannot believe that the clock looks just like the clock, the camera on the wall, and the bailiff's area. It's wild, and it does a lot to help you go there.
For anybody who lives through the OJ trial, I think they get excited by how close it's come. It's an incredible replica.
Walking onto the set and seeing that courtroom for the first time, seeing the dream team all lined up next to each other, you kind of gasp.
Oh my God, there's Judge Ito! Hey, there's Bob Shapiro. They're talking to each other. It's always magical.
You are hardly in a position to tell me what's acceptable or not on television.
Got it. Good checking. When we have our cast, who all look amazing, all in that set, all in their wardrobe, hair, and makeup, you really feel like you've stepped back into 1994.
There's sort of nothing you can do to forget the importance of what it is that everybody felt that they were doing during the trial.
Okay, Chris, that was for my audience. The People versus OJ just ended this week. You were saying that you saw some of it. The parts that you did see, how accurate do you think it was to the actual trial of what you got a chance to see?
I think it's pretty close. I mean, the interesting thing to me about the whole show is that, you know, when I covered it, and it wasn't like I covered it gavel to gavel. I mean, I was out there for a little bit of it, and then I was
not
out
like
there
Geraldo.
Yeah, no. I mean, it was, you know, I did 20 other things at the same time, but you know, I was close enough to it to get a feeling for it from when it happened to when the verdict came down. But
right.
My kids, my sons who are 24 and 22, who were, you know, 1 and 3 when it went down, you know, in 1995, are fascinated.
Right.
They're riveted by this show. And they're both in journalism. One works with me as an assistant cameraman and associate producer, and the other is about to graduate from college, and he's interviewing for entry-level positions on air. So, you know, they follow this stuff closely, but they are absolutely riveted by it. And I said, well, you kind of knew this story, right? And they're like, Dad, we were toddlers when this happened. And it's, you know, I remember that, and it really was, you know, from the slow-speed chase, you know, in the summer of 95 to the trial, it was
slow-speed chase was in 94. The trial was in 95, right?
94. Yeah, exactly. But it was a very compelling story. You had this great athlete who really didn't have publicly that much of a tumultuous life. I mean, there was a divorce and remarriage and a divorce, and there were whispers and allegations, but nobody ever saw it. I mean, in the general public, nobody saw it coming. Maybe in the close circles of O.J. and Nicole and the friends, but it was just, oh my God, what is it? I mean, I remember watching it in my family room, knowing that I was going to get on a plane any minute to have to go cover it. And they had the split screen for the basketball playoffs and the slow speed change.
Yes, the New York Knicks against the Rockets.
Yeah, exactly. It was phenomenal.
It really was, and I was 10, but I learned about it. I was a big sports fan. I was listening to a program called Mike and the Mad Dog. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Of course I am.
Okay, they covered it from gavel to gavel with, with hatred for that verdict. And I followed documentary after documentary, but I can't tell you how much of this one really puts you into the courtroom. This one shows you the lawyers, how much work they put into it from both the defense side, both the people side, the judge, the tension, everything from the 9 months that they're there. And you just see other things that you're not privy to, the jurors, how much work that they have to do, how many jurors were disqualified. And to me, they really hit it on the head. And I had a chance to look up some of the rating numbers, and it was staggering. I mean, they got in the 4s for a Tuesday night show, and I know that you know about these type of Nielsen ratings, and a 4.5 is an amazing number for a Tuesday night on a cable network. You would agree, right?
No, it's a huge number. I mean, a 0.7 is success, so a 4 is a home run. Right? I mean, really, I mean that's depending on the demographic and everything else. But yeah, no, it's a big deal.
It really is. What do you think, though? Just besides me, like that. Like I asked you about To Catch a Predator, what do you think, even people that saw the trial, lived through it like yourself, but there was just this cult faction that were just in love with Tuesday night, 10 p.m. must-see TV, because I would read the tweets and, hashtag I'm addicted. I've seen all things like that, they just could have not got enough of this. And I'm sure if they could go back into 2020 hindsight, they would have made this a 20-week episode, knowing how big it went.
Sure, yeah.
But in your opinion, what do you think they were so into this OJ phenomenon?
Well, I think
21 years
a couple
later.
Things. One generationally, I mean, it's something that my sons had heard about and known about, but didn't really watch the trial like I did in my generation or covered. And so they get a chance to relive it, and it was really a phenomenon. I mean, think about it. You have this stellar athlete who was a television personality, who was married to a beautiful woman, and they get divorced. And there's this horrific murder, slow speed chase. Did he do it? Is he capable of doing it? Is he not? Then there's this dramatic trial with all kinds of side stories. I mean, Mark Furman.
Yes.
I mean, that was a big deal.
Glove.
You had the glove, the dream team.
Mm-hmm.
F. Lee Bailey, who was once a huge deal, who was hired to be a part of this. I mean, and the rest of the lawyers. And this is before the Kardashians became a household name, and so it was a combination of things. I mean, it's just a confluence of events that made this huge. And then you had what many people would argue is jury nullification, that he was, guilty, but he, was able to escape this. And all the characters who testified, Kato Kaelin,
Yes.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, this is the trial of a lifetime. I mean, it hasn't happened before and probably will never happen since. This culmination of events and confluence of characters that it's just not going to happen again.
Well, there were a lot of trials, I'll say Casey Anthony, I'll say Jodi Arias, that happened after that. I don't think they compare in any way, but they were riveting. Like, give me your thoughts on Casey Anthony.
Well, again, this is, you got this young woman whose daughter is dead, and
5 years coming up to the anniversary of her acquittal.
Yeah. And again, I didn't cover it personally, so I don't want to get too far into it, but, it was just, again, one of those things that just captivated America. And, in a breaking news lull, where we're not in a controversial presidential campaign, when we're not at war, when we're not, having something truly internationally compelling, these things are very interesting to people for all the right reasons. I mean, why did somebody do that? Did they do it? What did they do? I mean, it's like the case in Florida, the fellow who shot the young man with the hood on. I mean, is that
Trayvon Martin?
Is that self-defense? Trayvon Martin, exactly. I mean, it's those things compel people because it rakes up an issue that is seething just under the surface in America, and it brings up racial issues, and it brings up policing issues and juvenile issues, and it all comes together in a way that's like, well, what the hell are we going to do about this? So it grabs our attention in a lot of different ways. I mean, again, going back to the O.J. situation, I mean, any celebrity trial, you can go back to Fatty Arbuckle. I mean, that was a sensational trial. But that was before.
Don Mesereau brought that up when he was talking about Bill Cosby.
But, Cosby is another thing. I mean,
Fatty Arbuckle.
I mean, a guy my age. I mean, think about it. I'm 56 years old. Who were my favorite comedians when I was a kid? Bill Cosby, Jonathan Winters, and those guys of that ilk. I mean, those were the funniest guys around. And so we, why would that guy get involved in a crime?
Especially like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just and that's people thought that was going to pass, but it's not clearly. I mean, there's a real issue there.
In terms of that, have you thought about the case against Bill Cosby? The fact that they're bringing a 10-year case, the fact that it's one accuser, the fact that it seems like it's politically done, so says a lot of people. What's your thoughts, not necessarily about his innocence or guilt? I think a lot of people do think he's guilty, but the fact that they're bringing a charge from over a decade ago.
Well, again, this is not a case that I've covered as a journalist, so it's hard for me to, give you a really good read on it. I mean, I've watched the case like everybody else, and I think obviously there are, based upon the evidence or what appears to be evidence that I've seen, there are some issues there. Is there a viable criminal charge at this stage? That's up to a jury to decide at some point. In this one case, it's been prosecuted. But, I mean, clearly, when that many women come forward
57
and all have the same story, I mean, there's a difference between, the fact that he, may have been a womanizer and the fact that drugs are involved, and it becomes not only creepy but potentially criminal. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to put drugs in people's drinks unknowingly. And so, if in fact that's true, that's a very serious and horrible allegation.
It is a terrible allegation, and there is a certain community that thinks that the women have, a lot of them at least, just jumped on the elevator. In terms of some of them might have been victims of Mr. Cosby, and then maybe 20 of them might have said, I was with him, but maybe it didn't happen. I'm into reading comments on YouTube, so that's what I get from a lot of people. I think it's possible that could happen, but not likely. What about you?
Well, again, we'll see how this works out from a criminal there is a certain amount of jumping on when something like this happens, but it just, the stories are so similar, and it would be easy for a lot of these women to just say, okay, this didn't happen, but they did come forward. And what got me was when the New York Magazine did the article, and I think at that point it was in the 30s, and they had all 34, 37 women's pictures on the front page. Now, you got to be pretty gutsy, I'm guessing, as a woman who thinks they've been victimized, to actually put yourself out there. In some ways, it'd be easier just to say, all right, this happened, I'm not good with it, but I'm going to move on. And if you can get, a civil suit out of it, fine. But these women put themselves out there to expose this, and you have to believe that, and respect that they truly feel that something criminal took place. And I've never seen anything quite like it, honestly.
Malcolm Jamal Warner, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said words to the effect that Woody Allen was never charged, and they never took away his movies or anything like that, and they let him go. And I guess the argument could be this is 50 plus women and drugging and different.
Well, I think it's two totally different cases. I mean,
yes.
And I'm not defending anybody. And again, I've never covered the Woody Allen case. I don't pretend to know more about it than anybody else. But from my reading of it, he, married somebody who was of age, and that may not be acceptable to people morally, but
right.
It doesn't appear that he's broken laws, and again, you were operating in a gray area. It may not be right, you may not like it, but, was it criminal, and what else is involved? And again, it's a matter of scale, I think, sometimes, and so you have one incident versus multiple incidents, and a criminal complaint is filed, and so it'll be up to a jury to decide a question of fact on the case.
No question, and I'm sure that will be one of the most watched trials. Also, especially if they put it on TV. I just want to ask you a couple of your trials, and I'm going to get into your ID show, which is an awesome show. But yes, absolutely. The Menendez brothers, did you get a chance to either watch that or cover that?
I did not cover it. I did watch it closely. And, that was really one of the first, I think, TV trials that captivated America. And that kind of set the stage for O.J. and everything that came afterwards.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then, if you remember, the first one was a hung jury. And the second one, it gave the prosecutors a lot more things that they were allowed to use. I'm just being told this, at least. I didn't follow it to the T. But they were able to use other things that they didn't use in case number one, that they ultimately got to find them guilty in case number two. Do you think that's true?
Well, yeah. I think different judges allow different things, and things are appealed, and sometimes evidence is admitted or not, and so you get a second chance at certain things. I think that's what happened in the Menendez case. And again, I don't want to act like an expert on that because I didn't cover it. I watched it. It just wasn't in my, I was covering different things, so I wasn't there, so I can't be an expert on it. But it was. For all the reasons O.J. captivated America, the Menendez brothers did exactly the same thing. And
yes.
Those are the cases that stand out, and there's one every year. In the Oklahoma City bombing, the Columbine.
Yes.
Every year there's something, and it just
Virginia Tech.
That's the case. Virginia Tech was crazy.
James Holmes.
James Holmes. I was out there for that. Covered that. You
covered that?
It was. Yeah, I was out there for that. Yeah, I flew back. I was in Washington D.C. for something, and flew back to New York on like a 6 a.m. flight because I had stuff to do in the office. And landed at 7:30. I got a phone call. I said, where are you? I said, I'm at LaGuardia. I said, you need to get to Denver, Aurora. I said, fine. So I literally got off a plane, got on the shuttle, went to another plane, and flew to Denver, and just started the coverage. And the interesting thing, I mean, obviously there was a horrifying event, but I was able to get my hands on some video that I was able to see of the bombs that Holmes had in his apartment as a booby trap for when the police came to look for him. And it was one of the most eerie scenes that I ever seen, and described it on television in our coverage at that time. But it was just, I mean, there were multiple jugs of volatile fluids and different igniters, and this guy had really set up a trap for any law enforcement who was going to come to get them.
And obviously you, me, the whole world saw the James Holmes beforehand, and the James Holmes that was a wonderful student, seemed to be a wonderful person, and it just scratches your head that
Ted Kaczynski
everyday people
Ted Kaczynski was a Harvard scholar. What makes somebody turn? It's mental illness. It's like the Newtown, Connecticut massacre. 26 kids. I mean, I was sitting in my office, and MSNBC was carrying the story, or kind of watching and deciding what to do on Dateline that night. And at the time, they were reporting, I think, 3 people had been taken to the hospital, some, gun wounds, but nothing serious. And I called a source of mine in law enforcement. I said, look, I got to make a decision on this, what to do. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, and I had a mild case of food poisoning. So my whole day was about, just sipping ginger ale and surviving the day. And so I'm sitting there, and he said, well, let me get involved in this. I'll call you back. 10 minutes later, he calls back. He says, are you sitting down? I said, yes, I am. I said, what's going on? He said, 20 kids dead, 6 adults. I said, are you sure? He said, take it to the bank, I'm sure. I said, all right. I took my last swig of ginger ale. I grabbed my backpack. I turned off the lights in my office. I went to the boss's office. I said, we got to go. We got to mobilize. He said, why? I said, 20 kids, 6 adults. He said, are you sure? I said, absolutely, positively. And we moved everybody out there. And it was just, such a tragedy. But again, there's this whole debate about, is it gun control? Is it mental illness? Is it a combination? Well, it's a combination. These things are not easy to figure out. It goes back to the predator argument. They're not the same guy. We want to treat everything in America with a one-size-fits-all solution. Lock them up, give them a drug, give them a treatment program, and it's not that easy. And it's all these criminals are a little bit different, but we are not addressing the mental health issues in America, not even close. And that's part of the whole thing.
Are you familiar with the show that shows they take young children? I think it's called Beyond Scared Straight on the A&E network. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Would you think that would be good for all schools around the area with such kids as behavior problem to maybe, if they see what goes on in jail, they'll think twice maybe, or they'll just,
I think so.
There's no stopping at James Holmes.
How do you stop a James Holmes? In hindsight, yes, there was a counselor who raised a red flag. Police were involved, but at what level? Nobody really knows. I'm sure there are people who wish they had done things differently, but it's like plane crashes. Every time something happens, we get smarter about preventing it from happening a second time. And it's just sad that people have to die to do that. I mean, but that's sort of the way it is. But yeah, I mean, there's no safe, pat answer to saying, okay, these are the people who need to be locked up. These are the people who need treatment. I mean, it's all a matter of being good citizens and being vigilant and trying to see these things coming before they arrive.
Yes, absolutely, no question about it. And do want to congratulate you as you did win the Edward R. Murrow Award, right?
Yes, a couple of them.
three of them, I think.
I think.
Press Club's National Press Award, International Investigative Journalist Award, as well as awards for elegance from the Associated Press and the United Press International. So kudos to you for winning.
Thank you very much.
Such great awards, and you had a chance to be a part of the Oprah Winfrey Show, right?
I did, actually. That was quite an amazing experience.
When was that?
I think that was in 2006, and it was on the Predator issue. But it's a pretty amazing event. I mean, she draws a great crowd. She's got a lot of energy, and it was when she calls you down and says, here's one of my favorite people in the world, and all the people cheer. It's quite something, quite overwhelming to do. But it was a lot of fun. She's a good person who does a lot of good work for this country.
I got to ask you, were you ever invited or talked about going on to the Howard Stern show?
We never got around to doing that, and for no reason. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Howard. He's a brilliant communicator. He's got a lot going on, and there were a couple times we were invited and couldn't do it because of travel, and a couple times we offered it up and they were already booked, and it just never worked out. But for no real reason. I mean, I would never. Doug Howard, I'd go on a show anytime, and when we were doing the Kickstarter thing for Predator, we put it out to him, and he had other stuff going on. But it's he's a character, but he does a good interview.
Yes.
I mean, he's does his own thing.
You got to know what you're expecting when you go on there. It's different.
Of course you do. You just I've done a lot of interviews with.
Well, you did Opie and Anthony, so
yeah, great.
It's not Howard Stern, but there's some similarities.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we're talking to Chris Hansen, Dateline NBC. Are you still with Dateline NBC, or just ID?
No, I'm doing ID, and I'm doing the new Predator show. And
tell me how the ID, how that all did they contact you? They have a who's who list with my friend Aphrodite Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure you're familiar with her.
The ID now in the coveted demographic is the number one network in America. I mean, higher than ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN, and Fox. So David Zaslav, who is now the head of all the Discovery networks, who's a great guy, a buddy of mine from NBC, kind of got in my ear, and some of the other executives, and so we decided to go do it. And the industry has changed. There was a time, I'm very fortunate to have been at NBC for 20 years, and do a lot of great work and have a lot of great support. But, the model has changed. So, I kind of decided at a certain point that I wanted to pursue some of the other offers I had in terms of television that I had ownership of and could license and syndicate and be a part of the business end of it. And so that's what I did. So this is a part of the bigger picture for that effort that we have going on now.
Now, you also did a show, I don't know if it was on ID, but it was something like To Catch a Con Man. I remember
that was for Dateline. Yeah, we did that.
That was for Dateline. That was very interesting.
Yeah,
and
cool.
So that was your wrap up with Dateline, I take it.
Oh, we did a lot of different things. I mean, we traveled the world and did everything from child sex trafficking in Cambodia to slave labor in India to human drug trials in India to window washers hanging by a thread from a window. I mean, it was just back in the day that show did virtually everything, and it's changed and it's fun. There's nothing wrong with it, and a lot of my good friends still work there. And again, I still have a very good relationship with NBC. We still have business meetings about shows. So it's a fine network, and they do a great job, and we have a great relationship. I just decided to take a different path in terms of how I'm going to distribute my work and my product, and how that all works, and it's gone well. So I'm very pleased with it. It's a busy time.
So tell my audience when they could catch Killer Instinct next, and give us an idea. into Killer Instinct for those who are not fortunate enough to have seen it yet?
So Killer Instinct, Season 2 is going to start in August. I don't know the exact date yet, but you can see Season 1 on demand, or you can go online to ID Killer Instinct, Chris Hansen. If you just Google that, it'll come right up. And basically what we do is we take cases that have either not been widely covered or where people have not spoken out before, and we use my interview style to take the viewer on a journey of discovery and really dig into these cases at a level. I mean, I don't have a studio because the field is my studio on these stories, and it's very compelling interviews. It's digging into cases that at a level where you won't see on any other show, and that's the great thing about ID, because they let me go do it. I mean, I just literally got back 2 hours ago or 3 hours ago from Tampa, Florida, where I was covering a case, and
wow.
we basically blanket this thing for 4 days, and we do all the interviews and all the on-camera pieces in the field. And then we also have the ability, because they allow the production team to do these amazing, film quality, film, like, high level production value recreations of the crime. And so when you marry those two together, it's a very compelling narrative, and I'm very proud of the show. It's really great. Season 1 did great, and we're halfway through shooting Season 2, and so like I said, they moved it up on us about 2 weeks, so we're hustling. We're on the road a lot these days, so it's all good.
And when is the Season 2 episode supposed to debut?
Season 2 will start in August, and I'll have an exact date probably in the next month or so.
We would like to have you back if that's possible.
That'd be
maybe
great.
As we get closer.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Tell me, do you like that having it debut in the summertime as opposed to the wintertime or spring?
Well, I do. So it's 10 episodes. So it premieres in August and then runs through November, and it's great. I mean, it's
okay.
It's a good time to start. So in other words,
it's like you get a little of the summer and you get a little of the fall.
Exactly. Yeah. So, when it premieres, it'll be on, for instance, in Season 1 it was on at 10 o'clock Monday nights. But then once that run ends, ID will rerun those shows as much as they want. And then they do a season in the UK, they do a season in, Australia, New Zealand, and et cetera. So it's good. It's good system.
Are you familiar with the other shows? Like the one show that I really got caught up with was I Almost Got Away with It.
Yeah,
on
they're great.
The ID network.
ID's great shows. I mean, and we get together for whether it's a Television Critics Association conference or whatever. I mean, I see all the other hosts, and obviously I know them, and for promotional things or whatever. But it's a great cast. I mean, it's a lot of smart people, good people working over there.
Okay, we do have a couple of callers that do want to say hello to you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Let's go out to Huntington Beach, California. Sarah joins us. Good evening, Sarah. You're live on King Jordan Radio with Chris Hansen as our special guest tonight. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Jordan?
Awesome.
And Mr. Hansen, I'm so happy to be able to just call in and say, excuse me, congratulations on your second season. I really, really loved the first season of Killer Instinct.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
Thank you.
I just want to compliment you and say that for years I've watched pretty much everything that you've done. I think you are truly one of the best television journalists that we are fortunate enough to have. And I wish you great success. And some of the stories that you've covered are very, very heart-wrenching, and but they need to be told. And I think you do it eloquently and with finesse. And
you made my night.
Well, you make a lot of nights for me. I'll tell you.
For a kid from Detroit,
Thank you.
I'll take that.
Okay. Well, you take care now. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for the call. Let's go out to Virginia. And let's say good evening to Mary, who joins us. Good evening, Mary. You're live on the King Jordan Radio Show with special guest Chris Hansen. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening, Jordan. And again, I just want to echo what a pleasure to be able to talk with you, Mr. Hansen.
Well, thanks, Mary. That's very nice of you.
And could I call you Chris?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. You're just like talking with a regular guy. I mean, just so eloquent and honest and informative and casual, and I've really enjoyed listening to you. Most of the people that are on listening to you tonight are diehard trial watchers from Facebook. Right. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been watching trials for 20 years back, from the days of Court TV.
Yeah.
And for most of us, the ID channel is our default channel that we have on all day long. For a lot of us that are retired now, we love the ID channel. I love the first show that you did that I watched every episode about To Catch a Predator.
Well, thank you. Well, we've got Hansen versus Predator, as I was telling Jordan earlier, is about to.
Looking forward to that.
Well, it's we've already got the first investigation shot, and we've got the next two locations picked, and so we're just finalizing where it's going to air. It's
wonderful.
It's very close, but it's good. And again, it's the landscape has changed on that, so it's really important that we do it again, and we did. And
absolutely.
So
and I just want to say that program was the first of its kind, because a lot of people, even myself, with my children and who are also in their 20s.
Sure.
Until we watched that show, most people didn't know this stuff was going on.
Well, listen, I'll be very honest with you. I mean, I wanted to do a show on this because I knew it was a problem through my law enforcement sources in the FBI and at the local level. And it was, okay, how do we do this? And then we found out about the online,
the chat room thing.
Perverted Justice.
The luring,
group.
yeah.
Right. So the watchdog group, Perverted Justice. So, we teamed up with them, and they were the decoys, and we, were able to use our ability with hidden cameras and microphones to actually show how this happens. So we were able to infiltrate the world, and that's what I've always tried to do. I mean, when we can infiltrate and get into the minds of people who are conducting these crimes, you can better learn how to protect kids or your parents from financial crimes or whatever's going on. And so that's always been the theory here. So we've been very fortunate to, figure things out kind of on the cutting edge and do these programs. And we're going to keep
I think that show, I don't know if it actually won an award, to tell you the truth, but it was a cutting edge show because it educated parents like myself of what was going on. 20 years ago, we were in the twilight zone as far as things like that.
No.
Now, it's so prevalent. It's every single day. Our children are being molested. Kids are being murdered. There's all the stuff that is happening with predators online, school, whatever. So, I just want I want to commend you for that. And I also wanted to say a couple of things. I noticed you were talking about which trial was the first. You know which trial was the very first trial that was televised? It was the Lorena Bobbitt cuts her husband's penis off.
Absolutely.
That was the very first trial. And the reason I remember that is because I live close to Manassas, Virginia.
Yeah.
So it was all over our news.
What was it, like 91, 92, 92, 93?
Huh? It was...
It was early 90s, 92, 93?
It was early 90s. I think it was like 94. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Actually, it was exactly 23 years ago.
Yeah. I remember it was right when I went to NBC, and I went to NBC in May of 93.
Right.
So it was right around there.
And anyway, I just want to commend you, and I'm so excited to talk with you. I also wanted to tell you that you are incredibly young-looking, Chris. And I figured that you were in your late 30s. So when I heard you say that you had 20-year-old children like myself, I was just flabbergasted.
We're in the same vintage. Don't you worry.
So keep up whatever you're doing. It's working.
All right,
and thank
I promise.
you for being on.
All right, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you to Chris. Of course, Chris, you're on Twitter at Chris Hansen, right? That is your...
Absolutely. Yeah.
So once again, I want to thank you so much for coming on
the
show.
Thanks for having me on, Jordan. I appreciate it.
And as we get closer to that season 2, hopefully we could have you back on again.
That'd be awesome. Look forward to it.
Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
All right, Jordan. Have a great evening. Talk soon.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Chris Hansen. Great show. Want to thank Allison, who couldn't make it but did set up the show. Next week at this time will be Jane Velez Mitchell, so you don't want to miss that show. That is her debut show. Week after that will be Tom Mesereau, and so stay tuned for that. I thought Chris gave us a wonderful show tonight. He answered every question to the T. A wonderful host, and definitely check out his book. Check out his shows. Very proud of this show that we did with Chris Hansen. He gave us a wonderful show. So that's that. We got into OJ. We got into all the trials. We got into, I always wanted to know why we never had girls on that show, but now we know, as the girls really didn't go into the chat room. Want to thank Maddie, Mary for all she does, Sarah, all the listeners, and we'll see you next Thursday with Jane Velez Mitchell. We'll leave you with a old school song since it's TBT. Thank you so much for listening to King Jordan Radio. You could follow the show on King Jordan Radio at King Jordan RAD. At King Jordan RAD. Thanks so much to everybody. Take care, and we'll speak to you soon.